Hi, everybody. Chapter 4, The Meow Mix-Up. It was a hot summer day, and Gordon, Paulo, and I had been sent to the grocery store to buy ice cream for a large party that Gordon's mother was giving that afternoon. We paid for the ice cream and we were about to leave when Gordon stopped at the community message board, the place where people put up notices about lost pets or things for sale. One particular ad caught Gordon's eye. "Look at this," he said. The ad read, "Responsible person needed to babysit cat for 3 days, $30. Beneath the typing was a picture of a large black cat with the caption, "Whiskers." "I know that cat," said Gordon. "His owner lives about 5 doors down from our house. I wonder why he didn't ask me to look after his cat. Heck, I'm responsible." "Because Chomper would probably eat the cat," I said. Thinking back to an unfortunate incident involving a gerbil entrusted to Gordon's responsible care, Gordon gave me a nasty look but didn't say anything. The three of us hurried off to Whiskers' house to talk to the owner. When we arrived at the house, Mr. O'Brien, Whiskers' elderly owner, was out front cutting his lawn. He shut off the mower when he saw us coming up the driveway. Gordon got right to the point. "Hi, Mr. O'Brien. We saw your ad at the grocery store, and your worries are over. We will take excellent care of Whiskers. We like cats, and we sure could use $30. I could immediately see that Mr. O'Brien was not thrilled at the idea of the three of us taking care of his cat. "Well," he stammered, "I was hoping that someone a little older might want the job. Whiskers is very, very important to me. He's all I've got. And well, to be honest, I've heard a lot of stories about you three." Setting the grocery bag of ice cream down on the hot driveway, Gordon proceeded to tell Mr. O'Brien how we were actually very responsible young men, and that the stories he had heard about us had been greatly exaggerated. Mr. O'Brien wasn't convinced. "I wanted someone a little older," he said again. "Older than us," said Gordon. "But think about it, Mr. O'Brien. If you add our ages together, we're very old. Probably as old as you." Gordon thought for a moment. "Well, maybe not that old. But if you hire us, you'll get 3 responsible people instead of just 1 at the same price." Mr. O'Brien threw his hands up in defeat. Okay, I'll hire you boys. Besides, no one else has applied for the job." "And I leave on my trip in 2 days, so I'm kind of desperate. Come on in and I'll show you where everything is." We followed Mr. O'Brien into the backyard so he could show us where he hid the house key that unlocked the back door. We then entered the house and went down the basement steps. Whiskers lay sleeping on an old chair. The large black cat opened his eyes to look us over and then yawned and went back to sleep. Gordon, Paulo, and I took turns petting Whiskers, who purred loudly in his sleep. Boy, I thought this was going to be the easiest $30 we ever made. Next, Mr. O'Brien led us to the furnace room and showed us the litter box and cat dishes. The instructions were simple. Once a day, we were to come over, put fresh water in the water dish, and open a can of cat food, and put it in the food dish. Whiskers was an indoor cat, and we were to make sure he didn't get outside. As we left the house, we assured Mr. O'Brien that with 3 responsible kids like us on the job, he had nothing to worry about. Gordon picked up the dripping bag of ice cream, from the hot driveway, and we hurried home to deliver it to his mother. 2 days later, Gordon, Paulo, and I headed over to Mr. O'Brien's house to check on Whiskers. The key was right where the old man had shown us, and we found that the cat was sleeping on the chair in the basement. He opened his eyes, looked us over, yawned, and went back to sleep. "It's like taking candy from a baby," said Gordon. "Imagine what we can buy with $30. We went into the furnace room and put fresh water in the cat's dish and opened a can of cat food. I gave Whiskers an affectionate scratch behind the ear, and we left the house, locking up behind us. We carefully put the key back in its hiding spot. The next day was a repeat of the first. We entered the house, found Whiskers asleep in the basement, petted him, fed him, put out the fresh water, and left. On our 3rd and last day, we entered the house and went through the same routine. "Whew," said Paulo as we filled the cat's food and water dishes. "That litter box smells worse than the pig pen at my farm. Whatever you do, don't take the lid off it." "Let's show Mr. O'Brien how responsible we are," said Gordon. "Let's air the place out a bit before he gets back today." He went over to the window and opened it to let in a fresh breeze. "That's better," he said. We locked up the house and went around to the backyard and put the key back in its hiding place, hearing a sound behind us. We turned around just in time to see a large black object leap out the open basement window and streak across the yard into the bushes. "Oh no," I yelled. "Whiskers has escaped." The three of us raced towards the bushes and immediately began calling the cat, but no amount of coaxing could make him come out of his hiding place. "He could be anywhere now," said Paulo, "and he's an indoor cat, so he's bound to get lost in the neighborhood." "Thanks for the cheerful thought," said Gordon sarcastically. "What are we going to do? The old man's due back in 3 hours." "I knew it was too easy," I sighed, picturing a long, hot afternoon searching for the cat. "If we don't find Whiskers, we don't get paid." We jumped on our bikes and began combing the neighborhood for Whiskers. We called and whistled for what seemed like hours. We crawled through bushes and hedges and peered over people's fences. Finally, about 2 hours later, Paulo spotted the cat crossing a street. We pedaled furiously after him. Sensing that he was being chased, Whiskers put on a burst of speed. He darted between parked cars and we lost sight of him for a moment. "There he is," cried Gordon, pointing up a tall tree. Perched on a branch about halfway up was Whiskers. His black fur gleaming in the sun. Gordon climbed the tree, talking softly to the cat. When he got within arm's reach, the once docile Whiskers hissed and clawed at Gordon. Now that he had tasted freedom, the cat was not going back to the basement without a fight. All of a sudden, I got an idea. Calling up to Gordon, I said, "You and Paulo wait here and guard the cat. I'll be right back." I jumped on my bike and pedaled home. I returned a few minutes later with a large pillowcase. "Here," I said, handing it to Paulo, who had climbed up the tree to help Gordon. I was relieved to see that Whiskers was still on the branch. Together, Gordon and Paulo managed to get the cat into the pillowcase, but not before he put up one heck of a fight. Both boys were scratched and sweaty by the time they climbed out of the tree with Whiskers securely in the pillowcase. Whiskers was yowling and hissing and thrashing about, and it was a challenge to carry him home on our bikes. We got to Mr. O'Brien's house, unlocked the door, and carried the cat, still in the pillowcase, down to the basement. "Quick, close that window," said Paulo. Gordon quickly shut the window and let Whiskers out of the pillowcase. He took off like a shot and hid under his chair, no doubt angry at us for spoiling his fun. We locked up and put the key back in its hiding spot. "Thank goodness that's over," I sighed. "This is the hardest $30 I've ever earned." Exhausted from our efforts of the day, we rode back to Gordon's house and relaxed on his front porch, sipping cold drinks and waiting for Mr. O'Brien to return from his vacation and pay us our money. Right on time, the old man pulled into his driveway. Getting out of his car, he walked over to Gordon's house and asked us how everything had gone. "Did Whiskers give you boys any trouble?" he asked. "Not at all," lied Gordon. "He was good as gold," added Paulo. Mr. O'Brien's eyed the scratches on Gordon and Paulo suspiciously, but said nothing. Taking out his wallet, he counted out 3 10 crisp dollar bills and handed one to each of us. "Thank you very much, boys," he said. "Thank you," we chorused. "I'm very tired from my trip," said the old man. "I'm going straight home to bed." He turned around and went back home, waving to us from his driveway. "Now," said Gordon, his old energy returning, "how shall we spend our cash?" "I say we go to the corner store and buy snacks with it," suggested Paulo. "Lots of candy," I added. "I'm starving after all that running around this afternoon." 45 minutes later, we sat on the curb by the corner store with our empty candy bags around us. "Man, I'm stuffed," said Paulo, rubbing his stomach. "I ate way too much," moaned Gordon. I opened my mouth to shove in the last piece of my candy when I suddenly spied a cat sitting under a bench in the park across the road. A black cat. A cat that looked an awful lot like Whiskers. "Oh no," I said. "Gordon, didn't you close that window in the basement?" "Yeah, I'm positive I closed it. Why?" Then Paulo caught sight of the cat and pointed across the street. "Wow, that cat looks just like Whiskers." Hearing his name, the cat trotted over to us. He purred and rubbed against our legs like a long-lost friend. An old feeling crept over me. "Guys," I said in a quiet voice, "are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yep," said Paulo. "Yep," said Gordon. Mr. O'Brien went home and smelled that litter box. He opened the window to air out the basement, and Whiskers got out again. "No, you dummy!" I practically shouted. "Whiskers has been out here all along. The cat we caught in the tree was some other black cat. We put the wrong cat in the old man's basement. What are we going to do now?" moaned Gordon. "I guess we'll have to take the real cat back to Mr. O'Brien and confess what happened," said Paulo. "Oh, geez," moaned Gordon, rolling his eyes. "We told him we were responsible and that he had nothing to worry about. If he knows we let his cat out, he'll want his money back, and we've spent it all. No, here's what we're going to do. We know where Mr. O'Brien keeps his spare key. We'll just sneak into the house quietly while he's sleeping and switch cats. The old man will never know." The plan sounded good. Paulo picked up the purring Whiskers, and we hurried over to Mr. O'Brien's house. We ran around to the backyard to get the key, but when we looked in the usual hiding spot, it wasn't there. "Oh no," I sighed. "Mr. O'Brien must have taken the key out of his hiding spot now that he's back home." "I know," said Gordon. That basement window I opened this morning didn't have a lock on it. We can crawl through it and switch cats." Gordon ran over to the window and gently opened it. The opening was just wide enough for Gordon to crawl through. Fortunately for us, the other cat was asleep on Whiskers' chair, no doubt tired from his ordeal earlier today. Gordon snuck up on the cat and grabbed him tightly before he knew what hit him. He carried the struggling cat to the window and released the wild cat into the backyard. The cat tore off across the yard and disappeared under the fence. "Good riddance," I muttered. Paulo gently handed Whiskers to Gordon, who placed the purring cat on his chair, and then it happened. Gordon clutched his stomach in pain. "Oh," he moaned. "Gordon, what's the matter?" whispered Paulo, worried. "Cramps," groaned Gordon. "Bad ones. I ate too much candy." "It was all that pop," I said, not feeling too well myself. "I need a bathroom real bad," whispered Gordon. "Come on. We'll pull you through the window and you can run home," said Paulo. "No time," said Gordon, frantically dancing around the dark basement. "Well, you can't go upstairs. The old man will hear you," I hissed. Suddenly, Gordon ran full speed into the furnace room. I heard him remove the lid from the cat's litter box and set it down on the concrete. Paulo heard it too, and we stared at each other in disbelief. Gordon was using Whiskers' litter box. We heard a long sigh, and several minutes later, looking much better, Gordon reappeared. He tiptoed over to the window, and Paulo and I quickly pulled him out. We quietly shut the window, and without a backward glance, we raced for home. I promised myself that I would never babysit a cat with Gordon again, no matter how much the job paid. And that's the end of chapter 4.